This 12-year-old girl made a murder pact with someone she met online. 12-year-old Emma Brown had plotted to end the lives of her entire family and pets. She made this murder pact with another 12-year-old girl that she had met online from Lufkin, Texas. The plan was that after the killings, Emma was going to drive to pick up the 12-year-old girl, and they were going to make a road trip to Georgia from Texas, and they were going to start their new life together. On September 20th of 2022, Emma shot her father in the abdomen at their home in Poolville, Texas, which is about 30 miles away from Fort Worth. Emma was about to take the family car when she ended up shooting herself in the head and passed away in the hospital 2 days later. As for Emma's father, he was released from the hospital and has made a full recovery. The district attorney's office has confirmed that the second girl, who has not been identified, has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and luckily none of her family members were harmed. This is your reminder that if you do have children, to make sure to monitor who they are talking to, because scary enough, stuff like this can actually happen.
This guy posted an online ad asking to eat someone, and somebody actually responded saying, "Yes, please eat me." And the worst part, they shook on it, they planned it, and they went through with it. Let me explain, but quick warning. It's 2001. This guy named Armin, he's 42 years old, a regular looking guy living in Germany. And ever since he was a literal child, he has been having these unthinkable cravings. He wanted to eat another human being. He tried to resist for years, but then one day, he gives in. He goes online to open this forum called Cannibal Cafe, and under a fake name, Frankie, he posts the most disturbing ad you will ever see. "I'm looking for a well-built man, 18 to 30, willing to be slaughtered and consumed." And you'd think there's no way someone's gonna respond to that. But surprise, surprise, someone did. The guy who responded was Bernd Brandes. He's 43, and his mind was not doing any better. For him, his fantasy wasn't about hurting other people, it was about destroying himself. And when he saw that ad, he didn't just say yes. He begged, literally saying, and I quote, "Please, eat me, please." And it was not just talk, they exchanged emails and planned every single disgusting detail. Bernd even went as far as signing legal documents to be Armin's last meal. And the worst part is, they agreed to film the entire thing. Yep, there's footage, and no, I'm not showing it to you, and you don't want to go looking for it either. Some of the people who've seen it literally said that it ruined their lives. So on the night of March 9th, Bernd travels to Armin's farmhouse. They walk to the bedroom. Bernd drinks like 20 sleeping pills and half a bottle of grown-up juice to numb the pain. But before he is fully out, Armin cuts off Bernd's private part, fries them up, and they eat it together. Oh god. Bernd is literally bleeding out, so he goes to the bathtub, and Armin grabs a Star Trek novel and reads it to him like this is some type of lullaby. Eventually, Bernd passes out, and this is when Armin finally finishes what he started. He pulls out a large knife, and then in the neck, kisses him goodbye, and then spends the next several hours disassembling his entire body. Then he neatly packages the parts and stores 44 pounds of him in his freezer. And over the following weeks, he cooks Bernd's flesh in a pan with olive oil and garlic. He later said human meat tasted like pork. I'm sorry, but why do people always say that it tastes like pork? Is that supposed to make it okay? The only reason Armin got caught was because he posted another ad. He was already hunting for his next meal, and he got in contact with 5 other men. But one person, a university student, finally went, "Yeah, this doesn't feel right," and called the cops. They raided Armin's house, found the footage, and people who have seen it literally say that it has ruined the rest of their life. Like, the image is stuck up in there. Some officers even had to leave the force. That is how brutal and gross it was. Armin was arrested and sentenced to life in prison, but tell me why people are arguing the fact that he shouldn't even be locked up. Because technically, Bernd did consent, and I don't know what's worse, the fact that this happened or the fact that somebody actually volunteered. If you made it this far, I'm sorry that I might have just ruined your entire day, but just know I love you. You guys are all my crime solving besties, so of course I will see you in my next video. Group hug.
This teenager was caught on camera climbing into a lion enclosure, which would end up costing him his life. 19-year-old Gerson de Melo Machado was from Brazil, and he was obsessed with wild animals for years. He dreamed of being around big cats so much that he tried to sneak onto a plane that was headed to Africa because he finally thought this was his chance to be able to work with lions. That's how intense his dream was, but behind that dream was a really sad reality. Gerson grew up in deep poverty. He struggled with schizophrenia and spent part of his life in mental health institutions. A lot of people said he never got the help or the support he needed. November 30th of 2025, Gerson went to a zoo in Brazil, and he had a plan to become face-to-face with a lion. He ignored every warning sign and climbed up the side structure of the lioness's cage. Gerson is seen lowering himself into the enclosure by sliding down the tree, and the lioness is there waiting for him. Lioness then pounces on Gerson as he is almost to the ground. He is seen trying to escape before being pulled to the ground. This lioness reacted instantly, not because of anger, but because of instinct. The attack was fast, and the injuries were fatal before staff could intervene. After this incident, the zoo posted on their Instagram that the lioness will not be euthanized because it's healthy and has never shown aggressive behavior outside of this incident. They assured people that the lioness will be observed and monitored since it has gone through a high level of stress. Unfortunately, this situation was very heartbreaking with a combination of mental health struggles, a dangerous dream, and a split-second decision that turned deadly. This is your reminder that wild animals should not be messed with.
She was shot and unalived while live streaming, and her viewers saw it all happen. Her name's Valeria, only 23 years old, a beauty influencer, and 2 days ago on May 13th, she goes to her beauty salon store in the city of Zapopan to go meet up with somebody. And not just anyone, it was a man who, according to her friend, was bringing her a very special gift, an expensive one that had to be delivered in person. And while waiting, she's just live streaming, talking to her viewers. Hours pass, and Valeria is getting really impatient because it's about to be 6:30 and this guy has not arrived yet. So she told her viewers that she was about to leave because it is getting late, but her friend, another influencer named Vivian, convinced her to stay. Eventually, a man pulls up next to her on a motorcycle and asks, "Are you Valeria?" She says yes and mutes the live stream because she assumes that they're gonna have a conversation. But seconds later, viewers watch as this man pulls out a weapon and her multiple times. She's hit in her torso and in her head, and she just collapses, and you can still see her clutching onto her stuffed pig. The live stream didn't cut off right away, it stayed on. People in the chat can see everything, and the stream was only ended when someone picked up the phone and turned it off. Some people are saying that that someone is Vivian, but as of right now, we don't know. The live stream is online to see, but I will not be showing it on here. There's currently a full investigation as to why and who would do this to her, but local reports are pointing to a man who apparently had been romantically involved with Valeria for several months. His street name is El Double R, and he's apparently the leader of a local cartel, and people describe him as the most dangerous man in that country. And some people also believe that he may not have liked all the attention and gifts that Valeria was getting from her fans, that he may have done it because of jealousy. And to make it worse, this man has allegedly been linked to the of multiple celebrities and influencers before. But like I said, he is a suspect. This is pure speculation, and I don't really know if he had something to do with it, because if she already knew him, wouldn't she have been able to recognize him when he pulled up? But maybe that's why she muted the live stream. I'll keep you guys updated if they finally make an arrest, but this is just another terrifying reminder that your life can end wherever and whenever.
This photo looks completely ordinary, and that's why it's terrifying. No one realized what he was doing until it was too late. It was summer 2012 in Phoenix, Arizona. Michael Marin was a 53-year-old guy living in the area, and people who knew him knew he was living the high life. They were so impressed. He was this big hotshot. He was a Wall Street trader, incredibly wealthy, and he made no bones about it. Like, he was gonna show off his money. He drove around in a Rolls Royce. He had Picasso artwork all over his million-pound mansions. He was not shy about flaunting his millions. But as we know by now on my page, nothing is ever quite as it seems. In 2011, police started to get frantic phone calls. Neighbors could see smoke billowing out of one of Michael's houses. There was smoke coming from the roof. This didn't look like a little barbecue or something. This looked like an actual house on fire. Now, luckily, Michael, who was actually inside at the time, did manage to escape, and the fire department just quickly raced over there and tackled the inferno. Obviously, amazing that Michael had got out alive, but his $1 million mansion was burnt to smithereens. Michael had spent a whopping $3.5 million on this home, and now it was totally ruined. So what the hell was going on? Immediately, police were like, has this guy got some enemies? Did somebody want to burn the house down, or did somebody want him dead? And the fire department then confirmed everyone's worst nightmare. This fire was no accident. It was started intentionally. They found out that a separate fire had been set in each 4 corners of one of the rooms. But nobody was expecting what happened next. Turned out Michael had got huge financial issues. He was in huge debt, and the investigators had reason to believe he set the fire in his own house to make a fraudulent insurance claim. Michael's family were just absolutely horrified by this news. Michael was taken to court and was found guilty of arson and insurance fraud. But he then decided to take matters into his own hands, quite literally. And I know it wasn't right for him to do what he did, but I really can't help but feel very sorry for him and his whole family in this situation. Hearing he was facing a lengthy prison sentence, he brought his hand to his mouth and then collapsed. Nobody knew what the hell had gone on. They didn't know whether he just fainted out of shock or whether he was collapsing to get some kind of sympathy. But he lay on the floor in the Phoenix courtroom and never regained consciousness. Michael had swallowed cyanide. He'd smuggled the capsules into the courtroom just in case the worst had happened. He just couldn't face going to prison. He was pronounced dead after being rushed to hospital, but when his heartbroken son got home, he was never expecting what he found on his computer. He was like trying to process what had just happened. He was obviously absolutely devastated, just in shock. And then a little ping came up on his laptop from his dad. The email included details of his will, just in case things didn't go well in court. It turned out before the hearing, Michael had actually set up like a delayed email to be sent that evening, just in case, giving instructions to his son. But to his son, it felt like he'd been sent a message from the grave.
If I survived falling out of the sky, I would simply never go outside again. But Julian, she didn't just survive a plane crash. She survived what came after. And honestly, that's even harder to believe. It's Christmas Eve. Julian, only 17 years old, is flying over the Peruvian rainforest with her mother. They're heading to see her dad, and this is supposed to be a really quick, happy holiday trip. But about halfway through, the plane hits a thunderstorm. And not just some turbulence. I'm talking about full-on lightning strikes hitting the plane and breaking it mid-air. And here's the part that doesn't even sound real. Julian is thrown out of the plane, still strapped to her seat. That is a 2-mile fall over 10,000 feet with no parachute. She just plummets. And somehow the jungle trees break her fall just enough that she survives. But here's the thing, when she wakes up, she's alone, no rescue, no supply, just rainforest and wild animals in every direction. Now, Julian's parents were actually biologists, so she knew this forest, she knew the dangers that came with it, and that's probably the only reason she survived what came next. She spent 11 days wandering through a jungle with a broken collarbone, a deep gash in her arm, infested with maggots, and wearing only a sleeveless mini dress and one sandal. She knew the jungle could kill her just as fast as that plane crash almost did, so she didn't panic. She got smart. She drank water straight from the streams to stay alive, but she refused to eat anything. She was not about to gamble her life on poisonous fruit. She endured severe insect bites, cuts, bruises, anything that you can really think of. And for 11 days, Julian followed the flow of running water because her parents once told her rivers lead to people, and eventually it did. She finds a small shelter used by loggers, but she was so weak that she could barely call for help. 3 Peruvian workers eventually find her. They poured gasoline all over her wounds, and they finally get her to a hospital. Julian was the only survivor of the 92 people on that flight. The only one. Her mom unfortunately did not survive, but I am sure that she is damn proud of what she accomplished. After everything, she did not hide from the world. She became a zoologist just like her parents, and she even returned to the crash site years later. I don't even have words for that kind of resilience. This is to anyone who needed to hear that survival is possible even when it feels impossible. Thank you so much for being here. If you are still here, I love you guys. Every time you watch this, their names and their story are less and less forgotten. Let's have a group hug.
This is the case of the real-life Jigsaw killer, where in 2009, body parts were being found all around England. Since it's October, you guys have been asking me to cover the most horrific, terrifying true crime cases out there, so be careful what you guys ask for. I've got a long list ready. On the morning of March 22nd, 2009, a farmer found a mysterious duffel bag just abandoned on his property. Inside the bag was something wrapped in plastic and duct tape that the farmer described as being large and squishy. The authorities were quickly called to the grisly discovery. Inside of the bag was the left leg of a human being. And then 1 week later, about a 35-minute drive from the first discovery, a second gruesome discovery was found. A forearm, elbow to wrist was just found on the side of the road. And then 2 days later, another discovery was found. This was about 100 miles away. And this is so terrifying. It was a head, but the head was missing its ears. The eyes were removed. The nose was removed. The mouth was removed. Pretty much all identifying features. The only thing left was the person's teeth. And at this point, the fact that there's been body parts just being found all across England is a huge media story. Literally everyone is talking about this. There's mass panic for everyone throughout the UK. They are living a real life horror movie. And this is really horrific and wrong. I'm really gonna piss a lot of you guys off, but at this point, the media starts referring to the victim as Jigsaw Man because he was missing so many pieces. And about a week later, the right leg was found about a mile away from where the left leg was found, and this leg was also wrapped in plastic and duct tape.
And then 4 days after that, a suitcase was found abandoned in a ditch. And just imagine the fear of walking your dog and finding this after weeks of people finding body parts in bags, and then you just see a suitcase abandoned in a ditch. And what really gets me is that everyone just keeps opening these bags that they're finding, even though it's been spread all across the media that people are finding body parts in bags. Could not have been me. If I found a suitcase in a ditch and people have been finding body parts all across the country, would not have opened the bag. But the man that was just walking his dog and found the suitcase did open the bag. Inside the bag was a torso and also another arm. They were able to determine that the victim had died by being stabbed to death. They also could determine that all of the body parts that had been found belonged to the same victim and that the victim was male, but they were unable to identify the victim because his DNA was not in the system. It's been 3 weeks of people finding body parts throughout the entire country. There's mass panic and investigators have zero leads. They have no answers for anyone. They can't even identify the victim, even though at this point they pretty much have an entire body. They have no choice but to beg the public for help. Does anyone know of a man in their life, a loved one that has been missing for about a month? They end up getting a lot of leads of people thinking that maybe their loved one could be this potential victim, this jigsaw man. But none of the leads were really panning out. Either the height would be wrong, the person would have identifying tattoos or different identifying markings, the race would be wrong, how long the person had been missing didn't really line up. Until they got a call from a mother whose son had mysteriously disappeared about a month ago, and that man was named Jeffrey Howe. See, Jeffrey was the kind of guy with a heart of gold who was constantly keeping in touch with his friends and family. So when he just randomly went MIA for a month, people were really concerned. So investigators went to Jeffrey's house to see if maybe he's there, if there's any leads. While Jeffrey was not there, there were 2 people living in his house. Inside of the home was a 38-year-old man named Stephen Marshall and his 21-year-old girlfriend. Stephen introduced himself as a coworker of Jeffrey's, and he said that he had been down on his luck, so Jeffrey allowed him to live with him rent-free until he got back on his feet. Stephen and his girlfriend also did not seem concerned at all that their roommate had been missing for a month. They never reported him missing, tried to find out where he was, and they also said that they had no idea where he could possibly be. Stephen and Sarah were both brought in for questioning, and both of them were being seriously uncooperative. They weren't asking any questions, but that was fine because investigators really wanted to get them out of the house so they could search Jeffrey's house. Investigators said that the house was suspiciously clean, but there wasn't really any other evidence, so they actually started to rip up the carpet, which I'm not even sure is something that you can do without probable cause, but it was a good thing that they did it because they ended up finding large amount of bloodstains in the bathroom and in the bedroom. It was clear that a murder had taken place here by the sheer amount of blood that they were able to find under the carpet, but they still needed to identify Jeffrey as their dismembered victim, which they luckily were able to do with his dental records. But they also needed to prove that Jeffrey's roommates, Stephen and Sarah, were the ones that committed this murder because these were their prime suspects at this point. So apparently there were green fibers that were stuck in the duct tape that had been wrapped around some of the body parts. So inside of Jeffrey's home, they start just taking anything that's green and made of fabric so they can test it with these green fibers, and they did get a match on a shirt that belonged to Stephen. So it wasn't looking good. So Stephen and Sarah were both arrested, and then they needed to find a motive, and they quickly found one, which was money. In the days after killing Jeffrey Howe, Stephen and Sarah sold a lot of his belongings and also were charging things on his credit cards. So through the money that they got from selling his belongings and also the charges on his credit card, Stephen and Sarah stole about $5,000 from Jeffrey. This is a man that let them live with him rent-free, and he lost his life for $5,000. That was all Jeffrey Howe was worth to these 2 evil people. And Stephen and Sarah, who were boyfriend and girlfriend before this, tried to turn on each other, blame the other one, said that the other one killed Jeffrey, but eventually they both did plead guilty for their roles in this crime. Before their sentencing, both Stephen and Sarah were given an opportunity to address the court, speak to the judge. Most people use this opportunity to apologize, show remorse, even blame their actions on their terrible childhood, but that's not what Stephen does. Stephen just gets up and says, "This is not the first time I've done this before." I'm assuming that he just wanted to clear his conscience or something, because he just gets up and admits to the court that he had previously worked for a gang, and his job in the gang was to dismember and dispose of the gang's victims. Stephen was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 36 years, and Sarah was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months, so she is out right now living as a free woman. If you watched the end of this video, thank you so much. Please let me know what terrifying true crime case you want to hear for the month of October. I already have a long list, but I'm always looking for recommendations. Please let me know your thoughts on this jigsaw killer case, and I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another terrifying October themed case.
This couple tried to trade their 2-month-old baby for a 6-pack of beer and money. 21-year-old Darian Urban and 20-year-old Shalene Ellers together had a baby that was about 2 months old. Together they lived in a tent at the Hideaway Campground near Beaver Lake in Benton County, Arkansas. In addition to their baby, they also had 3 dogs, and they claimed that being a parent was too hard for them and the conditions were very unstable. That's when the couple came up with the idea to trade their baby and all of their problems would go away. They were walking around the campgrounds when they approached a man and they offered him their baby, first for a 6-pack of beer. But when that didn't go anywhere, the situation escalated. They ended up drafting a handwritten custody transfer letter and signing over the baby for $1,000, and they recorded themselves doing it. And this man that they gave their baby to was heavily intoxicated. At first he agreed, but the moment that they handed over their baby to him, he realized that he was now holding someone else's 2-month-old baby. He started to panic, and instead of walking away, he immediately went over to the campground manager with the baby. He showed him the handwritten letter and explained what had just happened. That manager didn't hesitate and called the police. He reported that the couple attempted to give away, well, essentially sell their infant. Once police arrived, they recovered the letter and also the video, and as they were looking through the letter, the couple wrote the terms and also wrote a no take back style clause. As authorities were examining the infant, things got even worse. Inside of the diaper, they found a severe rash with blisters, open sores, and swelling across the butt area and genitals. There was even a strong odor of feces and ammonia and even some dog hair inside of the diaper. The baby was transported to the hospital, and doctors noted that that child needed care immediately. That same day, Darian and Shalene were arrested. They were charged with endangering the welfare of a minor and also attempting to trade a child for money or goods. Luckily, that baby is in much better health and is currently in custody of CPS.
This footage shows a man struggling to pull a suitcase which was full of human remains across a bridge in Bristol. He was a Colombian adult film star living with this couple in their London flat before he murdered, beheaded, and then dismembered them. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the double murder of Albert Alfonso and Paul Longworth. Albert and Paul were a couple living together on Scots Road in Shepherd's Bush, London, and the two were best friends. They meant the world to each other, and everyone who knew them had nothing but good things to say about the couple. They were described as friendly and chatty. Albert was very into building community around himself, and so he would be the one hosting the summer events and the Christmas parties. And Paul would be the one to always make sure he stopped and chatted to his neighbours. Neither of the men had many family, and so it was very important to them that they had community surrounding them. In March 2024, just after Paul retired from his long career as a handyman, the couple decided to jet off on a sunny holiday going to a resort in Colombia. While here, they would meet a then 34-year-old Justin Andres Mosquera. Justin and Albert had been in contact online for many years at this point. I think it was around since 2012. Paul, however, had nothing to do with their situation. Justin was an adult film star, and the movies/videos that he starred in were very extreme in nature, and this was something that Albert was very interested in, which, if everyone is consenting and safe and what they're doing is legal, then each to their own. The couple would bring Justin back to their Shepherd's Bush flat and welcomed him in with open arms. He would live with them rent-free and seemingly got everything given to him and paid for him. Albert and Paul would take him out on day trips to explore the country, taking him to beautiful Brighton, for example, and Albert was even paying for English lessons for Justin, who couldn't really speak the language. The couple had no idea that what they thought was a blossoming friendship was in fact Joosten biding his time, waiting for the right time to strike. On the 8th of July 2024, 71-year-old Paul was home alone with Joosten when he would be attacked from behind. Joosten creeped up behind Paul and using a hammer proceeded to continually whack Paul over the head until he was dead. His body was then hidden under the bed. Joosten would eventually leave the flat and returned sometime later, along with 62-year-old Albert, who had been at work as a swimming instructor. We don't know if he knew what had happened to Paul, if Joosten had cleared up some of the scene before he left the house, if he had made up an excuse as to why Paul wasn't there. However, we do know that on top of the very same bed where Paul's body was hidden underneath, Albert and Joosten began filming their own adult video. A total of 4 cameras would capture the men going from being intimate to catching every second of a violent, graphic murder. Joosten slitting Albert's throat before proceeding to stab him in a frenzy. After the murder happened, cameras would catch him getting off the bed and then singing and dancing to himself in excitement. He would go on to withdraw hundreds of pounds from Albert's bank, and he even started researching how much their flat was worth. Like, did he think he was going to be able to sell it without having any questions asked? Throughout the evening of the 8th, Joosten would have spent likely hours beheading and then dismembering both Albert and Paul. That following morning, on the 9th, he had ordered a new freezer to come to the flat, and he would store some of the dismembered remains inside of this freezer. The rest he would stuff into a suitcase. The following morning, on the 10th, he hired a man in a van to give him a lift from London over to Bristol. On this specific day in Bristol, it would have been absolutely heaving, as it was the men's Euro semi-final. Thanks to Ollie Watkins' amazing goal, they were able to proceed to the final. So there were hundreds of people all out in the centre and kind of just milling around, especially late into the night. Many of these people would actually witness Joosten pulling this suitcase and struggling. One witness would later recall how he had joked on with Joosten about how heavy the suitcase was and said something along the lines of, "I hope you don't have a dead body in there." That witness having no idea that he was absolutely right. He would eventually make his way to the Clifton Suspension Bridge, where he was stopped by some of the bridge staff members because he was acting suspicious. Now again, Joosten doesn't really know English that well, and so they were really struggling to communicate. Luckily, a cyclist was riding past on his bike when he overheard the miscommunication, and he offered to help translate because he could speak Spanish. Joosten told the cyclist that he was simply trying to look for a hotel, and when the cyclist asked Joosten if they could take a look inside of the suitcase, he refused. They were really curious about some dark liquid that was dripping out of the suitcase, and Joosten said that it was oil. All that was in the suitcase was car parts. But when the staff members flicked on their torch and leaned down to take a closer look, they would say that it wasn't the colour nor the smell of oil. This was blood. Upon this realisation, Joosten took off. He sprinted away and the police were quickly called. Through an address tag that was still on the suitcase, officers were led to the Scots Road home in Shepherd's Bush. Once they entered inside of the flat, they would describe as every room having blood in it. They were able to recover the bloody hammer and knife, and when they peered inside of the freezer, there they would find the decapitated heads of Albert and Paul. Other remains, including their torso, would be found split between this freezer and the suitcase. Over the next 48 hours, a manhunt ensued trying to track down Joosten. Helicopters and drones, dog units, and every available officer were boots on the ground, doing everything that they could to try and find him, but to no avail. It was like he had disappeared. They tried tracking his phone and it was turned off. However, 2 days later, he eventually switched it back on. That day, Joosten would be arrested outside of a Bristol train station where he was only wearing one shoe. It was theorised that he was going to try and make his way back to London. His trial took place at Woolwich Crown Court, where he was found guilty of the double murder of Albert Alfonso and Paul Longworth. He is set to be sentenced next month. This case is a one that that has left investigators with so many questions. For example, why did he travel all the way to Bristol to try and get rid of some of the men's remains? As I mentioned, they didn't really have any family, so it wasn't as if someone was going to be coming to check on them soon. It was actually pretty unlikely that they would have been discovered quickly. They also couldn't understand why he didn't just jump on a plane and flee back to Colombia, because if he did, it probably would have taken them a long time to track him down and even longer to extradite him back to the UK. That is a process that probably would have took many years. Did he plan to try and stay in the UK, living off of the money that he was going to get after trying to sell the couple's flat and stealing from Albert? There are just so many questions we do not have the answers to.
They were found shot to death in the bed of their truck during an overnight camping trip, and a disposable camera found at the scene contained these disturbing last known photos of them. This is the mysterious case of Brandon Rumbaugh and Lisa Guerreri, and it's one that will never not terrify me. On October 17th, 2003, Brandon and Lisa would head out for an overnight camping trip in the small town of Bumblebee, Arizona. The couple had recently got engaged, and they wanted to camp out underneath the stars to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. They lived together in Scottsdale, and originally they were going to go to Disneyland to celebrate, but it was too pricey. So last minute, they decided to recreate their first date and go camping instead. Lisa borrowed her mom's white 2000 F-150 truck and a video camera and told her that they would be back the next day. Now, Lisa's mom almost didn't let them borrow the truck because it was in need of an oil change, but again, last minute, she changed her mind and said it was okay. But she had no idea what was about to happen on this camping trip, or that it was about to become one of Arizona's most chilling unsolved mysteries. So their road trip started. The two had bought a disposable camera before leaving Scottsdale to document their trip, and about halfway there, Lisa's mom called them to see if they had made it to their destination yet. Lisa said no, and that they still had a long way to go, but at this point, everything seemed fine. Lisa's mom said be careful, in which Lisa replied, I love you, and those were the last words that she would ever tell her mom. What happened after this phone call has never really been explained. So when the next day came and went and nobody heard from Brandon or Lisa, Lisa's mom immediately knew that something was wrong. They never returned the truck and weren't answering phone calls, so she called everyone she knew and the police to begin looking for them. Brandon's friends knew of the general area where they were supposed to be because they had all gone camping up there before, so they began looking, but initially couldn't find anything. Then they traveled down Bumblebee Road, just off of I-17, and that's when they spotted their truck. Upon getting closer, they found Brandon and Lisa in the bed of their truck, deceased. They were in their sleeping bags and had been shot multiple times in the head. When the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office arrived to the scene, they found 2 items were missing, which were Lisa's keys and the video camera that she had borrowed from her mom. But about 100 feet away from the crime scene, police found the couple's broken disposable camera. It looked like someone had thrown it, and on the camera were the very last photos ever taken of Brandon and Lisa. They were posing in the same bed of the truck that they were killed in. Now, according to Lisa's mom, this final photo of Lisa seems off. She said that this wasn't Lisa's true smile, and it was almost like she was scared and uncomfortable, but still trying to smile anyway. But there was one final photo taken on the camera, and it is really disturbing to me. The final photo taken on the camera is pretty overexposed, and you can really only make out the corner of the image. At first, authorities didn't know what the image was of, but they discovered that it was an image of the inside of an old restaurant in Bumblebee. But what doesn't make sense to me is that this was taken after the final photos of the couple, meaning whoever took this picture was likely their killer, and it was taken after they were killed. This is really scary to me because it seems like if this is accurate, the killer took their camera from the crime scene, took the photo inside the restaurant for whatever reason, and then returned the camera to the crime scene. Why would anyone do all of that? It doesn't make sense to me, and it's one of the most disturbing things about this case. Police believe that Brandon and Lisa were either asleep or getting ready to go to sleep when they were attacked, and there was evidence that Lisa woke up at some point during the murders. There was one item found at the scene that contained DNA, possibly of the killer, but what that was has not been publicly identified. Police ruled out a murder-suicide, and there was no evidence of a robbery gone wrong or any sexual assault. And there were no drugs or alcohol involved in the killings either, so it's left many wondering what truly happened to them and why. This seems incredibly random, and it's terrifying. The area where they went camping, just off of Bumblebee Road, is pretty popular now, but it wasn't back then. Their campsite was extremely desolate and in a pretty remote part of the desert near the Bradshaw Mountains. You would think that you would feel safe out there completely alone, but someone was lurking out there waiting for after them. And it makes me wonder if this was a wrong place, wrong time type of situation. Maybe they saw something that they weren't supposed to see out there. It's really similar to the movie Wolf Creek, which is loosely based on the true story of Ivan Milat, who killed 7 people randomly as they backpacked through the remote wilderness. As much as they investigated, police never found who killed Brandon and Lisa. But one thing did come up early in the investigation that stood out to me. Just the night before they left on their trip, Brandon may have had an argument with an unknown man in the doorway of their apartment. It was around 10 p.m., and although the man has never been identified, he was reportedly in his 40s, tall and husky, and he was wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans. It's not known what they were arguing about or if they even knew each other. And just a month after the murders, police announced that they were looking for information about or from this person, but they never said if he was considered a suspect or not. Brandon and Lisa had no enemies. Since this was seemingly so random, many people have questioned if serial killer Israel Keyes could have been responsible. Israel Keyes murdered 11 people, but is suspected to have killed many more. He started in 1998 and never really had an MO. He targeted random people who just so happened to cross his path, and he would often strike in parks and campgrounds. He was active during the time that Brandon and Lisa were murdered, and one of the scariest things about Israel is that he would plant kill kits around the US that contained murder weapons, so he was truly random about who he killed. He didn't have a specific profile, but this is just a theory and has never been officially connected. Although their case is still open, it remains unsolved 21 years later, and whoever killed Brandon and Lisa is still out there.
This is how a selfie that was uploaded to Facebook led to a cold-blooded execution. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Daniel Green. Growing up, Daniel had a considerably rough childhood. He was raised within a home where abuse and beatings were things that happened often. Regularly, his dad would beat Daniel, his mother, and his brother. And when his dad turned to his baby sister, Daniel would always step in the middle, never allowing his dad to touch his baby sister, which always resulted in him getting extra beatings. In 2009, he met Erica Sandoval, and there were fireworks between the two. They had an instant connection and really liked each other straight off the bat. Erica's upbringing was strikingly different to Daniel's. She was the only daughter from her parents, and so she was daddy's little girl who always got the princess treatment. She got everything that she wanted and very rarely was told no. Just a couple of months after meeting in 2009, Daniel and Erica ran off to Vegas where they got eloped, and when they returned back home and the initial shock of it settled down, friends and family were elated for the couple, who seemed to be soulmates, the perfect match, and head over heels in love with each other. Quite quickly, however, cracks began to show, and Daniel started to see a different side to Erica. The couple would get into really intense, fiery arguments where they would be shouting, screaming, and swearing at each other. One of their neighbours who actually witnessed one of these arguments said that he thought that Erica was pushing and pushing, trying everything that she could to get Daniel to put his hands on her, which was something that he was never going to do. He protected his younger sister throughout his childhood. He was a police officer who protected the community, and so he was never going to harm Erica. When she was mad, Erica would punch holes into the walls, she would slash their furniture with razor blades, and Daniel's friends even worried that she was violent towards him. On one occasion, Daniel confided in one of his friends that he was awoken in the middle of the night by Erica pointing a gun in his face, and on another occasion, while he was out on his motorbike, he realised that his brakes had been cut, and he knew that it was Erica who did it. Erica had the ability to reduce Daniel to tears, which had a massive effect on his friends and family because he was this big, burly police officer and he never cried. By 2012, the couple filed for divorce. However, shortly after, they would learn that Erica was pregnant. After learning this news, they decided that they were going to give the relationship one last go. Maybe this baby would bring them together. However, only around 6 months after baby Aiden was born, Daniel realised that the relationship with Erica was never going to work. So he broke up with her and asked her to move out of the house, which she did, taking baby Aiden with her. By 2015, Daniel and Erica had been separated for well over a year and a half, and unbeknownst to Erica, Daniel had actually found love with someone else. She logged logged onto Facebook one morning where she saw this uploaded by Daniel. He had posted a picture of him and his new girlfriend looking happy together, and this enraged Erica, who still wasn't able to let Daniel go. With this rage, she would go on to do the unthinkable. On the 6th of February 2015, Erica broke into Daniel's home by removing the screen from the kitchen window and climbing inside. She then managed to get inside of Daniel's locked safe, where she retrieved 2 fully loaded guns. Clutching these guns in her hand, she then hid inside of a cupboard and laid in wait, waiting for Daniel to return home. He got back to his house just after dinner time, after he had dropped Aiden off at Erica's parents' house and been to the gym, and likely he was just going to come home and sit and chill for a little bit before he started his shift later that afternoon. As he unsuspectedly sat on the toilet, Erica creeped out of the cupboard and made her way to the bathroom. She slammed open the bathroom door and shot 31-year-old Daniel a total of 4 times. As he was sat on the toilet, she shot him twice, one of the bullets going through his hand and another into his chest. He then began to stand up, likely trying to disarm Erica, however he would fall backwards into the bath. That is where Erica stood over him, shooting him in the neck and then execution style in the centre of his head. When Daniel didn't clock into work later that afternoon, his police officer friends decided to swing by his house to check in on him. That is when they would discover the body of Daniel Green. Not even 24 hours later, 28-year-old Erica would be arrested and charged with the murder, which she did eventually confess to. When she was arrested, they did a search inside of her handbag, and inside here they found a sticky note where she had wrote down the name of Daniel's new girlfriend along with this woman's date of birth, which has led many people to think, was this girl going to be Erica's next victim? On the 6th of May this year, 2025, Erica was handed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 50 years to serve.
I asked you guys in the Instagram group chat if you're in that, what case you wanted to see for today. Now I'm so glad that you guys picked this one, because I feel like, you guys know how important mental health is for me, and I feel like it's so important to have these conversations. We're going to be talking a lot about postpartum psychosis, depression, a lot of heavy topics in this case, but I feel like it's so important to talk about them. That being said, though, we are talking about children, so if you think that listening to any of those topics, children, postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression, any of that, if you think that listening to that is going to harm your mental health in any way, shape, or form, please skip this video and I will see you in my next one. But I just think it's so important to be aware of these things because they are real things, and I think it's important to know about them, to try and understand them, and also to just be aware and be able to recognize it. So let's get into it. One could argue that at one point in her life, Andrea Yates had everything going for her. She grew up and was raised in a pretty religious household in Houston, Texas. She was one of 5 children. She was the baby of the family and also a very, very smart girl. Andrea became her high school's valedictorian. She was also a swim team champion, and it almost sounds like she was one of those people that are just kind of good at everything. The kind of person that's very dedicated. Like, if she's gonna do something, she's gonna do it to the best of her ability. After high school, she attended college, graduated, and went on to become a registered nurse working at Houston's MD Anderson Cancer Center. It was in the year 1993 that she married a man called Russell Yates, otherwise known as Rusty, the love of her life. They first met in 1989 when Andrea was working as a registered nurse, and Rusty was I always have a hard time saying this word. It's the easiest word in the world. I don't know why. NASA engineer. I feel like I just pronounced that word weird, but he was an engineer, and they dated for 4 years before deciding to finally get married, settle down, and start a family together. Shortly after the wedding, Andrea left her job. She quit because she felt like she was ready to finally pursue something that she had wanted her entire life, and that was becoming a mom. If you didn't guess already by her career choice of becoming a nurse, she had a very nurturing, caring aura about her. She loved to help people, she loved to care for them, and she was so excited to start a family of her own. It did not take long for her to fall pregnant, and throughout the next 7 years, she and Rusty would welcome 5 beautiful babies into this world. Their firstborn was a baby boy they named Noah, born in February of 1994, and at this point, they were living in this beautiful house in Texas, just soaking everything up. Newly married, first-time parents, they were also diving deep into their faith, which was something that was really important for the both of them. It was all new and exciting. So Andrea was raised Catholic, but then she became a Christian. Rusty was raised Christian, and that's how they were planning on raising their children. After their marriage, they both
both became very involved in an almost fundamentalist branch of Christianity, and they had a very big influence in their lives when it came to religion. A guy named Michael, I think you pronounce his name Woroniki. Michael was what I guess you could call like a traveling preacher. He was one of those guys that stood outside with signs preaching his beliefs, and it was his belief that parents must raise their children free from all sin in order for them to be able to go to heaven. And it also sounds like he was the kind of person that believed that going to heaven wasn't something that just happened. It was something that you earned and something that you had to work for. He also believed that in a family, it was the mother's responsibility to ensure the children's salvation, because it was the mother's duty to spiritually protect her children, while it was the father's role to go out and work and make money for the family. That's what he would preach. And that's also what Andrea and Rusty believed. They also believed that they should have as many children as God would give them. So forget birth control. That was out of the question. They wanted as many kids as they could have. They also thought that outside influences had a very negative impact on their lives. So for example, they would rather homeschool the kids to limit outside influences. They would rather just stay in their little bubble where they felt safe in. Andrea and Rusty would often have Bible study sessions at their house, and a lot of times they would have tapes playing of Michael preaching, and they would listen to those. So the couple gives birth to their second child. Rusty gets a job in Florida. They move there and live in a trailer for a little bit, but by the time they give birth to their third child, the family moves back to Texas, back to Houston. They're living in a trailer camper van situation now as a family of 5. And the reason why they chose to live in a trailer camper van situation rather than a house was because of their faith, because they would rather live in a compact, smaller place altogether, again playing into the idea that the outside world was dangerous and full of bad influences. So they would rather live a very minimalistic, simple lifestyle. But the thing is that when it came to their faith and this preacher guy, Michael, Andrea started to fall into a pretty negative headspace, because she was hearing over and over again how it was her role to save her children, how she had to protect them from everything evil in the world in order for them to go to heaven, how every single one of her choices in life had to be perfect for her children to go to heaven. And I think the concept of it is pretty common, right? Like, you want to be good to your children, you want to set a good example, you want them to be safe and sound. But in this case, there was such an intense pressure about it. Like, I'll give you an example. This didn't actually happen, but just to give you an idea of what it was like, I don't know, say Andrea bought herself a new pair of shoes. That meant that she was very materialistic, that she was very greedy, and that because she was greedy for wanting shoes, now her children wouldn't go to heaven. It was to that degree, and she felt like she was under so much pressure. And on top of that, this guy Michael started telling her and Rusty that because of choices that they made in their lives, their kids were not going to go to heaven. And that freaks Andrea out. Also, very important to note that Andrea had struggled with her mental health ever since she was a teenager. When she was 17 years old, she opened up to one of her friends about depression and just about how her mind was not a nice place to be. Now, as a mom, finding herself in this situation, she dives deeper into her faith, thinking, I need to fix this. I need to do everything right. I need to make sure that my kids do everything right, or else they're going to become sinners and God's not going to love them and they're not going to go to heaven. So things start changing in the way that when her kids are misbehaving or acting up, Andrea starts looking at them in a negative light, thinking, oh no, my child is acting out. He's a sinner. He's doing everything wrong. He's not going to be able to meet God because of his actions, when in reality, that's not what was happening. Like, it was just kids being kids, behaving like kids. But she didn't look at it that way. She looked at it in the, oh no, they have evil inside of them and I need to save them. So she starts to spiral, and Rusty starts to notice, and it got really bad after their 4th child. One day in 1999, when Rusty came home from work, he found Andrea shaking and chewing on her fingers, looking very unwell, very concerning. The next day, Andrea sadly attempted to unalive herself by taking a lot of the same substance. She was rushed to the hospital, she was treated, but then she was released after her symptoms went away. She was prescribed antidepressants, but she refused to take them. It wasn't long before she tried again, and we later find out that throughout this time, Andrea had been hearing voices in her head telling her to do this, to do that. After the second time, she was hospitalized again, then released, but she was given several different medications. Her family members, by the way, throughout this, are very concerned, but also very confused. They see that she's not acting like herself. Like, you would look at her in the eye and you couldn't see her. They thought that she looked like she had lost it. She was clearly struggling so bad, but they didn't know why. And also, that happened in June of 1999. In 1999, mental health was not nearly what it is now. It wasn't a topic of conversation that was talked about often, but it was clear that Andrea's headspace was in a very, very dark spot. In July of 1999, Andrea suffered a nervous mental breakdown. She did not want to be here anymore. The voices in her head continued. She started to hallucinate and she just couldn't take it. It was too much for her. That summer, she was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, which is where she was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is a rare but very serious mental health condition that can happen to a mother shortly after giving birth. And it's basically when a mom loses touch with reality, and it can cause hallucinations, so seeing and hearing things that are not there, delusions, so strong or false beliefs, and extreme mood swings, confusion, paranoia, trouble sleeping. It's really scary and it's really serious, and it is considered to be a medical emergency because it can lead to very dangerous thoughts or behaviors, including thoughts of harming or hurting herself or her children. During that stay, she was given more medication, but it actually really seemed to be working. Andrea was able to get herself back. Rusty said that it felt like he finally had his wife back again, but unfortunately that would not last long. The psychiatrist who Andrea saw would later say that she recommended that her and Rusty do not have any more children because she was not in the mental headspace to be able to handle that, and she said that if she were to have any more children, odds were that she was going to fall back into that postpartum psychosis. But less than 2 months after being discharged from the hospital, she would fall pregnant for the 5th and final time. The family had moved into a house at this point. They were no longer in the trailer, and Andrea was feeling good. The medication was working. She felt stable, but the issue came when she thought that she was at such a good place that she did not need the medication anymore. So she stops taking her medication going into the 5th pregnancy, and things would only go downhill from there. Andrea gives birth. Her and Rusty now have 4 boys and 1 baby girl, and the hallucinations come back and the voices come back, and she starts hearing things in her head again, telling her to hurt herself and everyone around her. Andrea would later describe what she was feeling to be the devil inside of her. At this time as well, she became obsessed with her faith to a dangerous degree. And it was so loud and so scary in her mind, and she stopped taking care of herself. She stopped taking care of the kids. She wasn't eating. She was treating herself horribly. And of course, Rusty noticed and her mother noticed. Andrea eventually stopped feeding her newborn baby girl completely, and that's when it was decided that she needed to be hospitalized again. In April of 2001, she was hospitalized, given treatment and medication in an attempt to stabilize her. But after a month in the hospital, she seemed to be doing okay enough to be released. But the doctors told Rusty that under no circumstances should Andrea be unsupervised ever. She was doing okay, but she was going to need a lot of time and patience and attention and help from her loved ones, especially when it came to taking care of the kids. Rusty is like, okay, that makes sense, I understand. And his mom ends up moving in with them for a little bit to help out. And they fall into this routine of either Rusty or his mom being home with Andrea and the children at all times. She's doing fine, not great, but fine. A month into this routine, a month into being released from hospital on May 3rd of 2001, in the middle of the day, Rusty's mom finds Andrea in the bathroom. She walks in on her filling up the bathtub completely. And she's like, hey, is everything okay? Why are you filling up the bathtub in the middle of the day? What's going on? And Andrea tells her, I'm filling it up so I can put my kids underwater, to hold them underwater until they are gone, which is awful, scary for everyone involved. And at that point, Andrea's hospitalized again. And for whatever reason, during that hospital stay, when Rusty, his mom, and the psychiatrist are talking, the psychiatrist makes the decision, I don't know why, he decides that Andrea wanted to unalive herself and herself only. And he says that the reason why she was filling up the bathtub was for herself, not for the children. She is released. She continues seeing a doctor afterwards, and now we get to June 20th of 2001. That day, Rusty left the house to go to work, leaving Andrea alone with the 5 children, even though the doctors told him not to. His mom was supposed to arrive there 1 hour later, so I guess he assumed that Andrea would be fine with the kids for 1 hour. But when he left the house that day, that would be the last time that Rusty would ever see any of his children alive again. When Andrea was alone, she went to the bathroom and she filled up the bathtub. She took her 3 youngest boys into the bathroom and she held them all underwater until they were gone. She then grabbed their bodies and laid them on the bed and put a blanket over them. She then grabbed her youngest baby girl, Mary, took her to the bathtub and held her underwater until she was gone. She then left her floating in the tub. Noah, then the 7-year-old, walked into the bathroom and he asked his mom what was wrong with his sister. He got scared and started trying to run away, but Andrea caught up to him, dragged him into the bathroom, and did the exact same thing to him. She then picked up both of the bodies that were in the bathtub. She laid them on the bed with their siblings and covered them up with a blanket. Afterwards, she called the police and she tells the operator that she needs them to come. The operator on the phone says, "What's the problem? I need to know why we're coming to you, ma'am. Are you ill?" And Andrea says, "Yes, I'm ill." The next call she makes is to her husband, Rusty, and she tells him that he needs to come home immediately because there was something wrong with the kids. Rusty asked which kids, and she said all of them. Officers show up, Rusty shows up, Andrea is placed under arrest immediately, and she doesn't deny anything. In fact, she tells them, I have the devil inside of me, I'm sick in the head, I'm the worst mom in the world, I need to be sent to prison. But also at the same time, she says that the reason why she did it is because she needed to, because she was afraid that Satan would ruin her children, and she hoped that, quote, maybe in their innocent years they would be accepted into heaven. The doctors who saw Andrea after the fact said that she was the sickest patient they had ever seen. Andrea Yates had 2 separate trials. The initial trial took place in 2002. She was charged with the murder of her 5 children. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Then in 2005, there was an appeal and a retrial. The Texas Court of Appeals overturned Andrea's conviction. So in that second trial, Andrea pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. And she was found not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was sent to a mental hospital rather than a prison. Since then, and to this day, she has remained in psychiatric care receiving the treatment for her severe postpartum psychosis and underlying mental health conditions. She's now in her 60s and she continues to receive different kind of treatments for different mental health conditions, including postpartum psychosis and schizophrenia. And she has said that she does not want to be eligible for release because she would prefer just to stay in that hospital. Her ex-husband, Rusty, stood by her side throughout the entire thing, and since then, he has come out and said that he forgives her because he understands that her action were the result of a severe mental illness rather than intentional harm. They did get divorced, but I read that they still keep regular contact and they talk at least once a month. This is one of those cases where it's so easy to be like, worst mom in the world, what a horrible person, it's awful, which it is. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And it's really, really sad, but this is also one where it's like, I do feel bad for her. And I do think that she was clinically mentally insane. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I have like so many conflicting feelings, but it's a horrific case nonetheless. Let me know if you guys have heard of this before, and let me know what your thoughts are on it because I want to chat to you guys in the comment section about this. But yeah, that is all from me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This is everything we know so far about the P. Diddy case and the allegations against him explained in less than 7 minutes. So it turns out that the red flags revolving Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy Puff Daddy Puffy, have been prevalent since the start of his career. So it's shocking that he was able to get away with everything for so long. So Puffy actually started working in the music industry at a very young age and had his own record label, Bad Boy Records, by the age of 24. Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records, and a West Coast label called Death Row Records were rivals during the 90s East Coast West Coast hip-hop rivalry, and what started out as maybe just friendly competition quickly turned deadly, and multiple people that were in the middle of it ended up being murdered, including Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, and both of their deaths Diddy has been rumored to be in the center of since the late 90s. During Diddy's entire career, he's been sued and arrested for multiple violent crimes and has never been held responsible. He either was acquitted or the charges were dropped or he was able to pay people off. In one of these incidents, 3 people were shot in a crowded nightclub, and P. Diddy and his then girlfriend J-Lo were both arrested for it, but neither of them ended up serving any time. Since everything has come out, people have really been side-eyeing J-Lo and also anyone that used to hang out with P. Diddy and go to his parties. I honestly would not be surprised if P. Diddy is offered a plea deal and half of Hollywood end up getting arrested. When Diddy was 38 years old, he signed a 19-year-old artist named Cassie Ventura to his record label Bad Boy Records, and he was obsessed with her from the beginning. Remember, he's 38 and she's only 19 years old, and he would not take no for an answer. The two of them did date for about a decade, but I would not say that this relationship was consensual. This was definitely a forced relationship. He was able to pretty much dangle her career and all of her dreams in her face if she would not comply and obey him. Diddy would also force Cassie to take substances against her will and would often SA her. He would often also force her to take these substances and then sleep with other random men while he either watched or recorded them. These are what Diddy called freak-offs, and these would often last several days, and afterwards Cassie would need to be hooked up to IV liquids because because she was so dehydrated. Just think about it. And we ended up finding out later on that Cassie was unfortunately not the only victim of these freak-offs. Cassie was also not allowed to work on her music, which was her passion, unless she participated in these freak-offs. Cassie was often also brutally beaten by P. Diddy if she would not comply, and in 2016, Diddy attacked Cassie in a hotel and then paid the hotel staff for the surveillance footage, which has now been leaked online. And in 2018, Cassie did luckily escape Diddy's abuse. And then in 2022, the state of New York passed the Adult Survivors Act, which gave victims a 1-year window to hold their abusers accountable, even if the statute of limitations had already passed. And this was the same act that found presidential candidate Donald Trump liable in an essay that he committed in 1996. So in November of 2023, under this act, Cassie filed a lawsuit against Diddy, and this would be the beginning of the end. In this lawsuit, Cassie accused Diddy of physical and psychological abuse as well as SA, also that he used to force her to take substances against her will and then force her to engage in SA acts with other random men. Also accused Diddy of trying to kill multiple people, including an incident where Diddy held a woman by her ankles off a 24-story building. Following Cassie's lawsuit, 3 more victims of Diddy ended up filing their own lawsuits against Diddy, and these were underage people accusing him of SAing them and drugging them. And then, like I'm sure all of you guys know, in March of 2024, Homeland Security got a warrant to raid Diddy's homes in Miami and LA in an SA trafficking investigation. They ended up finding and taking with them a lot of evidence. This was technology, this was recordings, and also infamously, they found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, as well as a bunch of adult toys. Extremely recently, on September 16th, 2024, P. Diddy was arrested in New York on charges of SA trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, plus some other charges. He has pled not guilty. He seems very confident that he will be found not guilty. So far, his bail has been denied, and the prosecution is very confident that they have plenty of evidence against him to convict him. If P. Diddy is found guilty, he is facing life in prison with a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. Then since then, over 120 victims, both male and female, have come out with their own accusations against P. Diddy, 25 of which were only minors, with the youngest being 9 years old. So this was actually really hard to research, which is why it's taking me so long to make this video. I feel like things are coming out every other day. There's also been a lot of rumors, but I do want to address 2 of those rumors. So we all know who Usher is. Turns out when Usher was only 13 years old, Diddy, who was an adult at the time, had legal guardianship over 13-year-old Usher, and there has been rumors that Diddy had SA'd Usher when he was a child, literally 4 years. Also, when Justin Bieber was 15 years old, he used to hang out with P. Diddy. Allegedly, he would go to parties with P. Diddy when he was only a minor, spend days on days with him at a time. I've seen a concerning amount of people on social media say that Justin Bieber needs to come out and say if anything happened with him and P. Diddy. I hope I don't see any of those comments on this video. Victims never owe you a statement. Justin Bieber wants to come out and say something one day. That's completely up to him. The man has a baby on the way also, so please just leave him alone. Don't leave any of those comments here. I just wanted to address that because I've been seeing a concerning amount of people say that Justin Bieber needs to make a statement. That's all I have for right now. I'm really interested to get you guys' take on this. How deep do you think this is? Also, how many people you think are involved in this that are like A-list celebrities, household names? Also, do you think that he will be sentenced to life in prison? I know that's what we're all fingers crossed hoping for. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another video.
This is the story of Theodore Wafer. Dearborn Heights, Michigan, November 2nd, 2013. 19-year-old Renisha McBride got into a little disagreement with her mother over chores. Renisha didn't do the dishes, and her mother was not playing that. After the disagreement, unbeknownst to her mother, Renisha left. She went to a friend's house. Now, when she got to this friend's house, they ended up buying a bottle of vodka, and they decided to play a drinking game. Now, it's unclear what that game was, but it was said that Renisha had lost the game, which means she was very intoxicated. Renisha decided to head home at around 12 a.m., but shortly before 1 a.m., her car was heard speeding and driving erratically down Majestic in Brummel. She crashed head on into a parked vehicle. Fortunately, nobody was in or around the car, but Renisha was seen getting out the car with a real bad head wound. She was bleeding, and she was also seen holding her hand. A witness ended up calling 911, but when the witness told the dispatcher that Renisha had hit a parked car, they was like, this could wait. They basically said, we'll get there when we get there. Not knowing that Renisha has a whole concussion from this. On top of she's intoxicated. She was seen walking away from her car about 3 or 4 times. And this is when somebody else decided to call the police to let them know, this is a young girl and she's drunk.
She'll come back up. You know what? You're a young girl and she's drunk. And she's walking back to the car now.
But Renisha ended up walking away yet again. This time she ended up on the doorstep of 54-year-old Theodore Wafer, who is known as Ted. Ted lives about 2 miles from where she crashed her car at, and she showed up at his door around 4 a.m. So it's 3 hours unaccounted for Renisha. They don't know still to this day what she was doing in those 3 hours. But she ended up at Ted's doorstep, knocking on his door. Now, this startled Ted. He said he thought somebody was breaking in the house because his car had been vandalized and his house had been shot up with paintballs just a few weeks prior. Now, this is not documented. This is just what he's saying. As the knocks got louder, he grabbed his shotgun. He opened his front door, and he has a screen door right there. He opened his front door and shot immediately, killing 19-year-old Renisha, shooting her point blank in the head.
Yes, I just shot somebody on my front porch with a shotgun banging on my door.
He immediately hung up after that, to the point where the dispatchers had to end up calling him back. But Ted said that the gun had went off on accident and that he didn't even know that he had one in the chamber. After questioning, Ted was not arrested. He was sent back home. As for Renisha, she was just looking for help. She was just going door to door, trying to see if somebody could help her, because the police didn't show up to about 40 minutes after the first call was made. And when they got there and seen that Renisha wasn't there, they said that they was going to circle around to see if they could find her, but it's no evidence that they ever even had did that. The report showed that Renisha's alcohol level was a 2 point something. I can't remember the exact number. And she indeed suffered a concussion off that collision. So she basically didn't know what was going on. She was walking around in a daze for hours. The witnesses that did see her said that she just kept repeating that, I just want to go home. Her family laid her to rest about a week later, but the city was still in an uproar because Ted is still out here in these streets. So this caused protests. They was comparing this situation to the Trayvon Martin situation.
It doesn't make any sense why he isn't here right now, locked up in the cell on some sort of charge of murder, manslaughter, whatever. It is not just. Why is he still at home?
To say I want justice for my niece. I don't want this guy walking around. He needs to be locked up. He needs to know what he did. He took a life, which was my niece's life. She's 19 years old. She's not here with us. We couldn't even look at her.
Ted was arrested 2 weeks after the incident. He was charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and possession of a firearm. Now, by the time his trial had rolled around, which was July of 2014, his story had changed. At first, he said the gun went off by accident. Now he's saying it was self-defense. Also, in his trial, they had showed his actual screen door, which was blew off the hinges. And they were saying that it got off the hinges because Renisha was banging on it so hard. No. That shotgun blast blew it off the hinges. They also said the injury from Renisha's hand was from her banging on the door, but the reports showed the injury was from the accident. But look at this screen door. Look at this screen door. If you open your door and you have a screen door, you can clearly see if the person is a threat to you or not. This case, but my thing is, why even open the door anyway if you think somebody is a threat out there to you? Because the placement of that shot, it's like he opened in, you know what I'm saying? Right there on the edge. I would never even open the door. In August of 2014, he was found guilty of all 3 charges. And in September, he was sentenced to 17 to 32 years. But in February of 2022, the Michigan Supreme Court had ordered he be resentenced because of double jeopardy, him being charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. They said it was a violation. In June of 2022, he was sentenced to 17 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 2031. Now, he has been remorseful through all this, and he stood up and he apologized to the family.
To the parents, family, and friends of Renisha McBride, I apologize from the bottom of my heart. And I am truly sorry for your loss. I can only hope and pray that somehow you can forgive me.
Now, this is going to be one of my shorter videos because this story literally came out of nowhere and I just could not believe it. You get into a car accident, go try to find help, and end up getting shot. Like, it threw me for a loop. Yellow Tape. What y'all think?